This is Eversolo's latest and flagship music transport, the Eversolo T10. In today's video, I'll be comparing the T10 to the T8 in terms of the design, build, features, and sound quality. All to answer the question, is this worth 50% more than the Eversolo T8? Without further ado, let's go. The T10 is a music streaming transport. You can connect it to your music streaming services. You can connect to your CD player, CD drive, NAS drive, and built-in storage. And you need to connect this to a digital to analog converter. The Eversolo T10 comes in an all-black design. It is a full-width chassis, much bigger than the T8. It has a glass front here with a touch screen, and as well as some touch-sensitive buttons in front. There are no physical buttons over here, only an on-off switch at the back. I'll show you the back later. So over the front, you can see there's a very beautiful and very responsive screen that's big. And everything here is using these buttons here, and as well as the touchscreen to control. On the top is just plain black with the Eversolo word on top. And the sides, there are ventilation fins for cooling of the unit. I'll now show you the back of the unit. Let me quickly go through the connections, inputs and outputs available on the Eversolo T10. So from the left to right, this is the AC inlet. So this is a multi-voltage connection and the on-off switch here. Okay. So this is your 2.5G Ethernet LAN connection. There are two USB 3.0 here. So this is where you can connect your hard disk or USB connections. This is the SFP fiber connection, so you need a SFP converter to plug this in. To me, this is actually a good option if you're using for long runs of cables, much better performance than using Ethernet cable. So this is the isolated USB connection over here. So this is where you connect to your DAC if you want to use USB connection. So over here we have the AES EBU connection, and these are isolated as well. So we have also the optical connection, coaxial connection, and I2S. So there's also trigger input and trigger output. So if you want to connect this to your power amp or your another amplifier to control it together, this is something you can do. And here is something different from the T8. This is the external clock, and there are two options here, 75 ohm and 50 ohms. And one thing good from here, within the software and the app, you can control whether you take in the 10 megahertz or the 25 megahertz connection, right? So this is the back of the Eversolo T10. Okay, this is the home page for the Eversolo T10. You can see compared to the T8, this is a bigger screen, so your controls are here, and you can have the album art cover on the left side. So your music services is on the first page. You have your music library, you have your global search, you have your Tidal, Cobas, Amazon Music, Apple Music, everything is here. And then you can go to the next one is on functions. So you can do CD player, CD ripping into your built-in memory. Your EQ here, you can choose different configurations and settings for your EQ. And you can do the EQ for the different outputs as well. Okay. So Room Correction Pro, this is the Evotune Pro, which is better than the one that is on the T8. You can do volume control, but I have not used this because I'm using the amplifier app. So you can use, for example, Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Music, Cobas, they're all available here, and you can even download more options available. Okay. So this is for your Connect functions, Tidal Connect, Room Ready, AirPlay, Spotify Connect, DLNA, basically your Cobas Connect, and this one, Network Audio Adapter. So some people are using this now to use your computer to supplement your music streaming. So this is supposed to give good quality as well. So your cloud, you can use UPnP, Dropbox, basically everything that you want, it's available on this player. Okay, we go to settings. You can choose the outputs. You can use your USB, I2S, AES, optical, coax outputs, and the different settings here. So you can see the different settings available, and the sampling rate as well as upsampling. So you have the original version, and you can do 2 times, 4 times sampling. and depends on the output as well. So your display settings here. So in terms of the options for screensaver, there are more options now. Let me show you what's available. So there are different options here compared to what's available on the T8. It's bigger screen, more options available. You can have also view meters. Let me show you. There's a lot more view meter options. You can see this one. Spectrum Analyser as well. There's a lot more Spectrum Analyser options available, even one that's showing a fireplace. Quite cool. Depends whether you like it or not. Okay, but they are more vibrant, more choices compared to the other models. So they're taking advantage of the big screen to show you to play it on the T10 here. Okay, so I just want to show you as well how the app looks like. So basically all the functions that you have on the touchscreen is available on the app. You can do every single control here, which not all the streamers in the market are able to do that. So this is one of the strengths of the Eversolo, is on the firmware. The firmware has always been quite stable in my use, and any bugs, you can see that they are making firmware updates very regularly and adding new features quite fast compared to the competition. And there's also the Zido forum. You can actually see that the response and feedback coming from the Eversolo team is quite fast in the community, and I think it helps to elevate their performance. So for me, definitely the firmware and use on the UI, it is one of the best in the market. So the T10 now uses an ultra low phase noise 10 MHz OCXO clock compared to the Eversolo T8, which use a femtosecond clock. And there's also the option to connect to an external clock to have it as the master clock input. So even though Eversolo did not provide the specifications, generally OCXO clocks are much better in terms of the timing accuracy and performance. So safely to say, this streamer has a lot of functions and adjustable settings, and compared to the models available in the price range, this has one of the best options for features out there. So in terms of the price, this is US dollars 2,180, and Singapore is selling for Singapore dollars 3,299. So I've opened up my Eversolo T10, and this is what it looks like on the inside. And I'm going to compare it with my Eversolo T8. So first thing you will notice is that the way the cover is open. So if this T10, only the top plate is removed, whereas for the T8, the top plate is including the sides as well. And then second thing, you can see also the size difference is very clear between these two. Yeah, so we can see that in the T10, the items are more spaced out. So between the different sections, there are dividers. So this is to prevent the electromagnetic field interference between the power supply and also the processing part of the streamer. Whereas in the Eversolo T8, there's no dividers, and the items are actually more crammed together. So you can see there's no separation between the different sections. Okay, so I'll just bring you through the different sections. So this on the left side here is actually the EMI input, power input from the AC connection here. So there are small transformers here as well to power up the standby section. And you can see the power supply goes to here. So this transformer is the old type transformer, so it looks like a donut shape, whereas the one on the T8, it's bigger, but it's a different kind of transformer. So apparently the old type transformer gives a better performance, and you can see from the transformer as well, it's connected to the filter capacitor section over here. There's a rectifier, capacitors over here. So this connection here has a copper connection, whereas on the T8 is a normal cable. Okay, so the rectifier looks the same, but I noticed the capacitors being used here. These ones over here are the Elna capacitors, which is a Japanese brand, which is better quality, I presume, from the ones in the T8, which is written as an Eversolo brand. Okay, in terms of the number of capacitors here, these are the 6 large capacitors, and over here we have a total of 30 smaller capacitors. And you can see, compared to the one in the T8, there's 6 large capacitors and 18 smaller ones. So of course, the one with the more capacitors are usually doing a better job in giving a cleaner and better power supply. Alright, so let's go to the processor. So this is a 8-core processor with a 8 gig RAM. Whereas for the T8, it is actually a 4-core with a 4 gig RAM. Even the size is different, so you can see, right? It's different there. Okay, the next I want to highlight to you is the OCXO clock that's available on the T10, whereas on the T8 is a pair of AccuSilicon clocks. So OCXO clocks give the best performance in terms of the clock accuracy. And you can see there are 2 connectors over here. So this is to connect to the external clocks. So if you have an external clock, usually that gives a better performance. If you connect here, and you can see the cable inside is quite a good quality as well. So when Eversolo releases their C10 clock, this is where the C10 clock gets connected to. And this is not available on the T8. So this is in a way something which you can upgrade your streamer in the future. In terms of the back connections, they are actually quite similar, other than the clock input, compared to the T8. Alright, so hope you have a good understanding now of the difference between the inside of the Eversolo T10 versus the Eversolo T8. How does the T10 sound in comparison with the T8? I've plugged in both of these players into my system, into my Mola Mola Tambaki deck, and I've also tried this in my friend system, which is connected to the AES Serat Hellingen deck. So first thing I noticed in my system, and I also messaged to my friends immediately when they were asking about this, I said, first thing I noticed is the clarity has improved throughout the frequency range. So what do I mean by that? I mean everything becomes clearer, more distinct, and more easy to pick up. Especially in terms of the sound staging, you can tell immediately that the positioning of the instrument in the soundstage becomes more clear in terms of the layering, where it is in the soundstage depth, as well as the left-right positioning. It becomes more distinct. I also heard improvement in terms of the dynamics and transients. So in terms of percussive instruments, you can tell that the transients come very fast when there's a drum strike or a cymbal hit. You feel that the thing comes immediately, and this actually improves a lot of the realism of the musical instrument. Going back and forth between these two, I can tell, especially in my system and my friends, it was quite clear that the T10 is a superior transport, and actually music overall flows much more better in the T10 compared to the T8. I've actually tried with the USB and AES EBU connection, and I was quite surprised to hear the results. So in my setup and my friend's setup, using the USB first. So in terms of USB connection versus the AES EBU for the T8, for example, the differences were not so much. I found that sometimes the USB is slightly better, but sometimes it is the AES EBU, but it's very, very small difference. But when it came to the T10, the AES EBU actually gave a better result. I would say the further improvement on the clarity, not so much difference, but we can tell when we do a side-by-side, on the app, you can actually switch the connections. So we can actually tell which is better. So for the T10, it became more obvious that the AES EBU was a better connection compared to the T8, which didn't have that much difference. But of course, the difference, I would say, repeat again, is not so much. And actually, sometimes this difference can be even more by changing the different cables that you're using. The results will vary according to the system you're using, the DAC that you're using, and also the cable that you're using. The variations are not much, but I would suggest that you try both options and see which one you prefer. Yeah, so the results were quite interesting to me. I also tried to use the external clock with the Eversolo T10. So I connected it to the LHY AS6, which has a clock output, and I connected it to the T10. So using the app, you can actually switch using the internal clock versus the external clock. Frankly, we did not hear much difference between the external clock on the LHY and the internal clock on the Eversolo. It was very, very difficult. So I would say, in conclusion, it was not much difference. So I hope when the C10 is out, I get to try it out, and I'll give you my take on that, on the differences with the C10 clock. For the PCM upsampling feature, there's a PCM upsampling feature on the T10 that's not available on the T8. So you can use the original sampling rate, or you can upsample it by 2 times, 4 times, 8 times, and 16 times. So you can switch it around. Frankly, I did not hear much difference versus, so basically you're doing the upsampling in either your player or you're using your DAC to do the upsampling. So for me, I didn't hear much difference between using the built-in upsampling and the one in my DAC. So again, the feature is there, it's free, it's available for you to try. But in my result, it didn't have much difference in the sound. Okay, for the Evotune room correction, this is a step up versus the Evotune base. This is actually the Pro version. So it has more bands available for the tuning. I've tested it. I found that the results are slightly better. But then again, for my application, usually I don't use room correction. And if I do, I just try to minimize it for the bass. So in terms of purely the bass, it was very difficult to tell the differences between Evotune and the Evotune Pro. But if you're using full bandwidth, yes, the Evotune Pro does make a difference to the clarity and the accuracy of the tuning. So again, try to use it. You may or may not like it. It works in its own way, and I think it's something that it is available to you. So most streamers in the market do not have this option, and even if they have, it is not as powerful as what is built in inside the Eversolo T10. So if you have bass issues which you cannot control by acoustic means, and this is something that you can use to try to control the bass notes and the nulls that you have in your room, right? So the T10 is better in terms of sound quality compared to the T8. But which one should you buy? To me, it depends on your system and your current setup. A change in the DAC will actually give a much bigger change in the sound quality compared to a change in the streamer. So if you are not satisfied with the tonality, with the character of your DAC, then changing the streamer will not satisfy you in terms of the sound quality. But you are already happy if your DAC, for example, if you have the Eversolo Z10, you want to bring the best out of that DAC, I think the T10 is the one that will make you happy, and that would be a great choice. So while the T10 is not inexpensive, it's still lower in price compared to flagship models from the competitors. Let's say the Hi-Fi Rose, Lumin, and Matrix Audio. And they have actually a very similar performance. So if you look at the price increase, yes, if you look at the difference, you can say it's $800 US, or you can say a 50% increase. It is quite a significant jump. But for majority of people, they will be happy with the T8. But if you are a hardcore audiophile who want to bring out the best of your system, and you feel that you're already satisfied with your system, your DAC, and you want to go to the next level in terms of streaming, I would say the T10 is highly recommended. For me personally, I think the T10 has brought my system to a new level. And while I really like the T8, I really enjoy the improvements from the T10, and I have decided to keep this as my new reference system. And to me, I really look forward to the C10 when it comes out and see what are the improvements that will bring to my system. So for that, that's the end of the review, and thank you for watching, and I'll look forward to the next one.